There is something powerful about being underestimated, and if you have lived through seasons where people overlooked you, dismissed you, or treated you like you had nothing special to offer, then today's message is for you. I want you to hear this with your whole heart because it may explain your entire journey. You never needed to announce your greatness. You never needed to prove your intelligence to people determined to misunderstand you. You never needed to compete with those who measured worth by noise, attention, or appearances. You carried something far more dangerous than loud confidence. You carried quiet wisdom. While others were performing, you were preparing. While they were showing off, you were growing. While they were busy judging your blank face, your calm attitude, and your silent presence, they completely missed the genius that was developing beneath the surface. They looked at your silence and called it weakness. They looked at your patience and called it fear. They looked at your humility and assumed you had nothing to offer. But today the story changes, because the truth always has a way of revealing itself. And when it does, there is no move left for those who underestimated you. They are finally realizing what was standing in front of them all along, and by the time they understand it, the game is already over. They are checkmated. Understand something that most people never learn. Real genius rarely introduces itself with applause. It doesn't need to dominate every conversation. It doesn't seek validation from people who cannot recognize value. Think about the strongest trees in a forest. They spend years building deep roots before anyone notices how high they have grown. Your life has been exactly like that. Every challenge that tried to break you was secretly strengthening your foundation. Every rejection forced you to become more creative. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment. Every lonely night became another lesson that polished your character. While everyone else was focused on what was visible, heaven was working on what was invisible. And what is built in secret always carries more power than what is built for attention. That is why your calmness confused people. They couldn't understand how someone could stay composed while facing storms. They expected emotional reactions, desperate explanations, and endless attempts to fit in. Instead, they found someone who simply kept moving forward. They mistook your peace for emptiness, but your silence was never empty. It was filled with strategy, vision, discipline, and faith. Some of you have spent years wondering where people constantly underestimated you. Maybe your co-workers ignored your ideas until someone else repeated them. Maybe family members overlooked your advice until life proved you were right. Maybe friends treated you like the least important person in the room. Maybe people walked away because they believed they had found someone better. But here's what they failed to understand. They were making decisions based on appearances instead of substance. They judged the cover without reading the pages. They assumed that because you weren't constantly trying to impress people, you had nothing worth noticing. But time has a way of exposing shallow judgment. Eventually, opportunities begin chasing the person everyone ignored. Success starts speaking louder than opinions. Results become impossible to deny. Suddenly, the same people who doubted you start asking how you did it. They begin studying the person they once dismissed. And that's the moment they realize they underestimated someone who was never ordinary. The realization comes too late because you have already moved to another level. Here's another truth you need to carry with confidence. Never regret hiding your brilliance behind humility. There is a difference between pretending to be small and choosing not to boast. You weren't hiding because you lacked confidence. You were protecting what was still growing. Seeds stay underground for a reason. Diamonds remain buried until the right moment. Eagles spend time alone before they dominate the skies. Your quiet season wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every delay was developing your capacity. Every closed door redirected you toward a greater purpose. Every person who walked away created space for the people who truly belong in your future. That's why you should never waste energy trying to convince people who already made up their minds about you. Let them believe what they want. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you've reached your limit. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to keep growing, keep learning, keep trusting God, and keep walking with integrity until the evidence becomes undeniable. And now, many of those same people are experiencing something they never expected. They are watching your transformation from a distance. They see doors opening that they cannot explain. They hear your name in rooms where they thought you would never enter. They witness your peace while they are overwhelmed by anxiety. They notice your confidence without arrogance, your strength without bitterness, and your success without needing revenge. That is what truly unsettles them. They expected pain to make you bitter, but it made you wiser. They expected rejection to make you quit, but it made you stronger. They expected betrayal to destroy your future, but it positioned you exactly where you needed to be. Every move they thought would limit you became another step toward your destiny. That is why they feel checkmated. Every strategy built against you has lost its power, because God turned every obstacle into an advantage. What they meant to stop you became the very thing that accelerated your growth. So today I want you to stop apologizing for being different. Stop shrinking yourself so other people feel comfortable. Stop believing that your quiet nature is a weakness. Some of the greatest minds in history were underestimated because they didn't fit the world's expectations. Your value has never depended on how loudly people applaud you. Your purpose has never been controlled by public opinion. Your destiny is not delayed because someone failed to recognize your potential. Keep building, keep improving, keep praying, keep learning, keep serving with excellence, even when nobody notices. The right people will recognize your value without being convinced. The right opportunities will find you at the right time. And when your season arrives, you won't have to announce it, because your results will speak louder than any introduction ever could. As I leave you with this final thought, remember this every single day. You were never overlooked by God, even when you were overlooked by people. You were never forgotten, even when others ignored your presence. You were never ordinary, even when they treated you like you were invisible. They saw a blank face, but God saw a brilliant mind. They saw silence, but God saw wisdom. They saw someone easy to replace, but God saw someone impossible to duplicate. And now the truth is unfolding before everyone's eyes. Those who underestimated you are finally realizing who you have always been. But by the time they understand your worth, your journey has already carried you beyond their reach. The doors have opened, the lessons have shaped you, the strength has been built, the victory has already begun. So walk forward without fear, stand firm without arrogance, and remember that the greatest checkmate is not proving people wrong. It is becoming everything God created you to be, while keeping your heart pure, your spirit humble, and your eyes fixed on the purpose that was waiting for you all along. Look around for a moment and think about how quickly this world judges people. It only takes a few seconds for someone to decide who they think you are. They look at your appearance, your quiet nature, your calm expression, and your unwillingness to compete for attention, and they immediately begin creating a story about you. They assume that if you are not the loudest person in the room, you must not have much to offer. They believe that if you are not constantly proving yourself, then you must not be capable of great things. But if this message has found you today, I believe there is a reason. You have experienced what it feels like to be underestimated. You have watched people overlook your ideas, dismiss your potential, and mistake your silence for weakness. Yet what they never understood is that your silence was never emptiness. Your silence was preparation. Your calm face was not hiding fear, it was protecting wisdom. While everyone else was busy trying to impress people, you were quietly becoming the person God designed you to be. There is something extraordinary about people who do not feel the need to announce their greatness. They understand that real strength is not measured by how loudly someone speaks, but by how deeply they think. You were never interested in collecting applause because you knew applause fades. Instead, you chose to build character, discipline, and wisdom, qualities that last long after the crowd has disappeared. While others spent their energy convincing people they were important, You invested your time in becoming valuable. That difference is what separates temporary attention from lasting influence. The world celebrates noise, but God often works through quiet obedience. Some of the greatest transformations happen in silence, where nobody is watching and nobody is applauding. Those hidden moments are where your true power was formed. Think about every season when people ignored you. At the time, it probably hurt. You wondered why your ideas were dismissed while someone else's was celebrated. You questioned why your efforts went unnoticed, even though you worked harder than everyone around you. There were moments when you felt invisible, as though your presence made no difference. But what if those seasons were never meant to break your confidence? What if they were teaching you something far more valuable than recognition? When no one notices your work, you learn to work without needing praise. When nobody applauds your effort, you discover how to stay disciplined without external motivation. When people underestimate you, you become free from the pressure of living to meet their expectations. Instead of chasing approval, you begin chasing purpose. That shift changes everything, because purpose will always outlast popularity. Many people spend their entire lives trying to look successful instead of becoming successful. They carefully manage their image, hoping people will admire them. They speak with confidence they do not truly possess. They make promises they cannot keep. They constantly seek attention because attention has become their source of identity. But you chose a different path. You understood that real confidence grows quietly. It grows every time you keep your word. It grows every time you learn a new skill. It grows every time you overcome a difficult season without giving up. It grows every time you trust God, even when nothing around you seems to make sense. These are victories that cannot always be seen on the outside, but they create an unshakable foundation within you. Your quietness confused people because they expected you to react the way everyone else did. They expected you to argue every insult, defend every accusation, and respond to every misunderstanding. Instead, you stayed calm. Not because you had nothing to say, but because you understood that not every battle deserves your energy. Wisdom teaches you that silence can be stronger than the perfect argument. Every unnecessary conflict steals time from your purpose. Every attempt to convince people who refuse to understand only drains your strength. So you stopped trying to explain yourself to everyone. You realized that people committed to misunderstanding you will always find another reason to doubt you. Instead of wasting your energy, you invested it in your growth. You allowed your actions to become your voice. There is a reason seeds remain hidden beneath the ground before they become mighty trees. Imagine if someone looked at a field immediately after the seed was planted. They would see nothing but dirt and conclude that nothing important was happening. They would have no idea that beneath the surface, roots were spreading, life was developing, and something extraordinary was preparing to emerge. Your journey has looked exactly like that. Many people judged your life during the underground season. They saw no visible success, so they assumed there was no progress. They laughed because they could not see what God was building inside you. They measured your future by your current appearance instead of by your hidden potential. But God never judges by appearances. He looks at the heart, the willingness to learn, the ability to endure, and the faith to keep moving when nobody else believes. Every disappointment you faced became another lesson. Every rejection sharpened your understanding. Every failure taught you something success never could. While others were celebrating temporary victories, you were gaining permanent wisdom. That is why your journey cannot be compared with theirs. Your process has been different because your purpose is different. God was never preparing you for ordinary success. He was preparing you to carry responsibilities that require maturity, patience, and humility. Those qualities cannot be developed overnight. They are formed through seasons of waiting, seasons of silence, and seasons when nobody notices your progress. Perhaps the hardest part of your journey was watching people underestimate you with complete confidence. They acted as though they had already figured you out. They believed they knew your limits. They assumed your quiet nature meant you lacked intelligence or ambition. Some even dismissed your dreams before you had the opportunity to pursue them. But the beautiful thing about being underestimated is that it gives you room to grow without constant interference. While people focused on someone else, you continued improving. While they celebrated louder voices, you strengthened your mind. While they competed for recognition, you competed with yesterday's version of yourself. That is the kind of growth that cannot be stopped, because it is rooted in discipline rather than comparison. Never believe that your calm spirit makes you less powerful. Some of the strongest people in the world speak the least because they understand the value of listening. They observe before they act. They think before they speak. They prepare before they move. That kind of wisdom often appears ordinary to people who only admire confidence on the surface. But when the moment arrives to make important decisions, it is usually the quiet person who sees what everyone else missed. While others reacted emotionally, you stayed focused. While others chased shortcuts, you committed yourself to steady progress. While others looked for quick victories, you built lasting strength. And one day, something remarkable begins to happen. The same people who once overlooked you suddenly notice the results they never expected. They wonder how you became so capable. They question where your confidence came from. They are surprised by your wisdom, your discipline, and your ability to succeed without needing constant recognition. What they fail to realize is that none of this happened overnight. It was built one quiet day at a time. It was built through prayers nobody heard, tears nobody saw, lessons nobody celebrated, and sacrifices nobody appreciated. Your blank face never represented an empty life. It represented a heart that refused to stop growing. It represented a mind that valued learning over showing off. It represented a soul that trusted God's timing more than public opinion. So never be ashamed of your quiet seasons. Never apologize for being different from those who crave attention. Continue walking with humility. Continue learning when nobody is watching. Continue trusting God's process even when it feels slow. Because one day, the very silence people mocked will become the reason they admire you. The wisdom they overlooked will become impossible to ignore. The discipline they underestimated will produce results they cannot explain. And they will finally understand that what they mistook for weakness was actually hidden strength. What they believed was emptiness was overflowing with purpose, and what they called an ordinary person was someone God had been preparing for extraordinary things all along. There comes a moment in every powerful story when the truth can no longer be hidden. It is the moment when masks fall, assumptions collapse, and people are forced to confront a reality they never expected. If you have spent years being underestimated, overlooked, or treated as though you had nothing special to offer, then I want you to hear this with your whole heart. Your greatest victory is not the moment people finally recognize your worth. Your greatest victory is that you kept moving forward long before they ever noticed you. While they were busy deciding what you could never become, God was already writing a future that no human opinion could erase. They thought they understood your limits because they judged your present. They had no idea that your future was being shaped by the hands of the one who sees the end from the beginning. Many people make one dangerous mistake. They believe that what they see today is all there is to see. They judge your current position and assume they know your destination. They see you struggling financially and assume you will always struggle. They see you working quietly behind the scenes and assume you lack ambition. They see your kindness and mistake it for weakness. They see your patience and call it passivity. They believe they have already figured you out, but what they fail to understand is that God often hides his greatest work inside ordinary-looking seasons. Before David became a king, he was simply a shepherd. Before Joseph ruled Egypt, he was a prisoner. Before countless people fulfilled their purpose, they walked through seasons where nobody believed in them. God has never depended on public approval to accomplish his plans. Perhaps there were people who laughed when you shared your dreams. Maybe they dismissed your ideas because they could not imagine someone like you achieving something extraordinary. Some may have walked away because they believed you would never become successful. Others may have spoken against you, hoping to limit your confidence. At the time, their words may have hurt. You may have questioned yourself. You may have wondered if they were right. But every challenge was quietly preparing you for the day when their opinions would no longer matter. God allowed those difficult seasons to strengthen something inside you that success alone could never build. He developed resilience, patience, wisdom, and faith. Those qualities became your greatest advantage because they cannot be taken away by criticism or circumstances. One of the greatest lessons you can learn is that your destiny has never been controlled by the people who doubted you. Think about that for a moment. How much time have you spent worrying about people who never had the power to determine your future? They could reject you, but they could not cancel God's purpose. They could ignore you, but they could not erase your calling. They could underestimate you, but they could not stop the gifts that God placed within you. Human opinions are temporary. God's plan is eternal. The moment you truly understand that, you become free. You stop chasing acceptance from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You stop explaining your vision to people who cannot see beyond the present moment. Instead, you begin walking with quiet confidence because you know who is directing your steps. It is amazing how life has a way of reversing situations. The same people who once overlooked you often become the ones watching your progress from a distance. Suddenly, they notice opportunities finding you. They hear about your accomplishments. They see doors opening that they never imagined would open for you. They wonder how someone they once ignored has become so influential, so peaceful, and so successful. They begin asking questions they never thought they would ask. How did this happen? Where did this confidence come from? When did they become so capable? What they fail to understand is that your transformation did not begin when they noticed it. It began years earlier, when you chose to keep believing while nobody else believed in you. It began every time you prayed instead of quitting. It began every time you learned from failure instead of allowing failure to define you. It began every time you trusted God's timing instead of rushing ahead of His plan. Some people expect revenge when they see someone who has been mistreated finally succeed. They expect anger. They expect bitterness. They expect you to return the same pain that was given to you. But that is not how God works. True victory is not about making your enemies suffer. True victory is becoming so transformed that their actions no longer control your emotions. Imagine how powerful it is when someone who once tried to hurt you realizes that you are still kind. They expected hatred, but they found forgiveness. They expected arrogance, but they found humility. They expected pride, but they found peace. That is a victory far greater than any argument, because nothing confuses darkness more than someone who refuses to become bitter. Many people spend years trying to prove others wrong, but that is an exhausting way to live. If your motivation is only to silence your critics, you will never find lasting peace, because there will always be another critic waiting. Instead, live to fulfill God's purpose. Let excellence become your response. Let consistency become your answer. Let integrity become your reputation. Results have a way of speaking that arguments never can. You do not have to announce your greatness when your life already reflects it. The harvest will eventually reveal the quality of the seed. Your growth will eventually answer every doubt. Your character will eventually outshine every false accusation. Remember that every delay in your life had a purpose. There were moments when you wondered why certain doors remained closed. You questioned why opportunities passed you by, while others seemed to move ahead. But now you begin to understand that not every closed door was rejection. Some were protection. God was keeping you away from places that were too small for your calling. He was preventing you from settling for temporary success when He had something far greater prepared for you. Sometimes, the greatest blessing is not getting what you wanted when you wanted it. Sometimes, the greatest blessing is discovering that God's timing protected you from mistakes you never even knew existed. When your season finally arrives, People will call you lucky because they did not witness the preparation. They will celebrate the success they can see while remaining completely unaware of the years of sacrifice that produced it. They will admire your confidence without knowing how many nights you spent fighting fear. They will praise your wisdom without realizing how many painful lessons shaped it. They will notice the victory, but overlook the battles that came before it. That is why you should never compare your journey to someone else's. God writes every story differently because every purpose is unique. Today, some people are realizing that they completely misjudged you. They believed your quietness meant weakness. They believed your humility meant a lack of confidence. They believed your patience meant you would never move forward. But now they see someone who stands with unshakable peace, someone who carries wisdom instead of pride, someone who has become stronger because of every trial rather than despite it. Their realization has come too late because you are no longer seeking their approval. You have already discovered your identity in God. You have already learned that your value was never dependent on their opinions. So as you continue walking into the future, refuse to carry the weight of yesterday's rejection. Leave behind every label that people tried to place upon you. Walk with confidence, not because you are better than anyone else, but because you know whose you are. Keep serving with humility. Keep growing with discipline. Keep trusting God, even when the path seems uncertain. And when people finally realize who you have become, welcome them with grace, but never forget the lessons your hidden seasons taught you. Those quiet years were never wasted. They were preparing you for this very moment. The same people who once believed they had you figured out are now standing before undeniable evidence that God was working all along. They may have recognized your value too late, but God's purpose was never late. It arrived exactly when it was meant to, and now no one can stop what He has already set in motion. That is the true checkmate, not defeating people, but standing victorious in the purpose God prepared for you long before anyone else believed it was possible.